So what's up, guys? We hope you're doing well. Welcome back to Taraji Eco Farm. Today we'll be talking about groundnuts. Yes, you can see groundnuts on my hands. So a while back, we actually planted our very first groundnuts on the farm, and we actually realized they can do well in this area. So what we are going to do today is to show you the whole process because now we are planting new groundnuts for this season, but we'll show you the whole process, how it would look like if you were to decide to plant groundnuts for yourselves up to the time that you're going to actually eat them. So we'll show you what we did with the groundnuts for the last season, and we'll show you what we are doing for this season as we plant our new groundnuts. So stay tuned in, and I hope that you're going to enjoy the video.
So we are currently preparing the piece of land we are going to plant our groundnuts. And originally, it's not a place where groundnuts are grown. We just tried and they worked. And I think they worked in this particular area because the soil here is it's well drained soil. It doesn't hold a lot of water inside. I think that's what groundnuts want. So I'm going to show you how we prepare that. And we're actually doing this on a small scale. We're growing groundnuts just for our family's consumption. So I'm going to show you exactly how we're going to do that. So the first thing is to get rid of the grass. We have this grass that grows here, this kind of grass, and it has very deep roots. And we don't want it to compete with our groundnuts. So what I'm doing here is I'm going to dig this place, makes it very nice, make sure the soil is very fine, and also remove the roots of this grass so they don't compete with our groundnuts as they mature. So once that's done, we've removed the root for that grass. We're going to make things like mounds. We call them mounds, so that because groundnuts don't need a lot of water. So when you make mounds, the water just gets in and flows downwards. So the ground just absorbs whatever they need, and the rest just flows because they don't need a lot of water. So that's what I'm going to do next. So if basically prepared different places we're going to plant our groundnuts, and you can see we have this. We've actually removed most of the weeds from there. It's very clean, and then we made these mounds. We are going to plant the peanuts on top here. The thinking behind this is that if water is going to be to stop here, it's going to be left in the within the uh, in between the mounds that we made, because peanuts don't want a lot of water. They just need water that is well drained. So the water gets in, they take whatever they take, and the rest just leaves. So that's what we prepared. You can see the different sections. You have one over here, and we have another section below here, and you have this little section here. You can see here, and then you have the last piece over there. So now we've done the land preparation. We've removed all the weeds. We made sure the roots of the weeds are not there, so they don't compete with the groundnuts. Now the land is ready, so the next part is just planting.
Yeah, so now that we've prepared the land, we are going to plant. And our method of farming is not very complicated. So we are going to plant the same way we planted our previous groundnuts. So essentially, I just do some holes with my hands, with my two fingers, then put in 2 groundnuts per hole. So that's how we did our last groundnuts, and they did well. So we stick to that for now. Maybe in future we can try something else, but for now we are sticking to what we did in our last uh, planting season. Yes, yes. So now we are done with planting. This is what groundnut plant looks like. If you've never seen it before, this is what it looks like. Now, when you plant your groundnuts, it will take I think less than 2 weeks for them to sprout. So for them to actually appear above the ground, that's what I mean, for the plant to appear above the ground. Uh, and of course, now you have to monitor your plant very well. If you're in a place where the land is a bit steep, like where we are, if the rains are too heavy, then at some point your mounds might there'll be a bit of erosion, and then your mounds might disappear. But if you're in a rather flat land, the mounds might stick for a bit of time. Um, so you have to monitor the crop. You have to keep monitoring for weeds. We didn't see any pests in our last season, but I'm sure some people experience pests in their groundnuts. But for us, mostly we're monitoring for weeds. So what we used to do, and what you can do on your farm, is actually every now and then just check for weeds. Make sure you uproot the weeds so that the crop is not competing with the weeds. And then, of course, make sure the crop gets enough water. If you have prolonged periods uh, of no rain, make sure you water your plants so that you can get a good harvest. We did have a bit of issue in uh, one of our lands where the plants sort of started drying out because they didn't have enough water. So if you experience periods of less rainfall, just make sure you water your plants so that they have enough water for them to grow and mature. Yes, so after a period of time now, you're taking good care of your groundnuts, then they will start flowering. First of all, they get a bit bushy. For you to know it's a healthy plant, they get a bit bushy. Then they get these small, tiny yellow flowers. Yeah, so and then your groundnuts will start forming underground, and um, soon they'll be ready to harvest. So from the time you plant to the time you harvest, for us in our last season it took us about 4.5 months. So the people who harvest after 4 months, some after 4.5. We harvested after 4.5 months, depending on the variety. I'm not sure which variety this is, but we harvested after 4.5 months. Um, yeah, and when harvesting, when you pull this plant, this is actually what you get: groundnuts covered in this shell, like you can see here. Yeah, so now after you harvest your groundnuts, what we did is remove these shells, these shells from the plant itself. So when you remove these shells from the plant itself, you'll remain with all the shells that you have for your groundnuts. And because they will be moist, then you need to dry them. So we dried ours for quite some time. The sun was quite hot. We dried for a couple of days. I'm not sure exactly how many, but we dried for a while until the shells were hard enough. So when the shells were hard enough to be cracked open, so that's when we cracked them open and got our ground nuts. Okay. So now after you get your ground nuts, you can now do whatever you want with them. So for us, what we did after drying the ground nuts, we cleaned the ground nuts. Like we actually washed them because they had a bit of swell. We washed them in salty water, and then we put them in the oven to cook for quite some time. And since there were not that many, we did not get to enjoy peanut butter. Hopefully, this time round we can. But we enjoyed having the groundnuts as a snack. So that's how we enjoyed our groundnuts, and that's how you too can enjoy your groundnuts when you plant them. So that's just a short process of how you can plant your groundnuts for your family from start to the time that you actually harvest them. Yeah, so that's it for today's video. We hope that you enjoyed the journey of how you can grow your own groundnuts from start to finish. And after 4 months, you can as well enjoy your own groundnuts in your house, make yourself some peanut butter, and have fun with your family. So remember, we started a new section called Shamba Talks. We hope that you'll check that out as well. That's where we just share our views concerning agriculture, self-sufficiency, agribusiness, anything interesting about rural life, and anything in between. So thank you. See you on next week's video. Bye-bye.